Can I get somebody something? There's this book called Living the Science of Mind. I recommend it to you, but then I recommend books pretty much every week. But we've been going through selected portions of this month. And today there's a section I want to bring to your attention on giving and receiving. Divine givingness. Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of this teaching, he loved to add, he loved to turn a gerund into a noun by adding NESS to the end. So instead of just giving, you have givingness. And instead of just being, you have beingness. And as somebody pointed out one time, instead of just Elliot, you have Elliotness. But anyway.
Oh my God.
So he speaks of the givingness and the receivingness. Are you up for this? The idea here is that the universe is constantly pouring itself out in lavish abundance on all of its creation, on all of its territory. You and I are part of that territory, and we fulfill our divine responsibility, I guess you might say, not only by giving, which we've been encouraged to do by the culture since we were this high, but also by receiving. Because if somebody's going to give, there has to be somebody else there to receive, right? And so there's a constant flow of energy, some of it financial or material, much of it, all of it really, emotional, that we stand in the midst of, but often we don't recognize this. And so he uses the images that are appropriate to autumn of the horn of plenty. You know, the cornucopia? It's that baskety thing with the pointy end, and there's fruits and vegetables spilling out of it. And it symbolizes the harvests that come in and so on. He says, well, there's the horn of plenty, only it's got more than fruits and vegetables, and it's got basically everything that materializes in form. And he says, so the horn of plenty pours itself out, and you come to it, and I come to it with the bowl of acceptance. You ready for this? The bowl of acceptance under the horn of plenty. And he says, apparently with a straight face, that what you don't want to do is have your bowl upside down as you stand under the horn of plenty. That would be foolish. What would happen? Everything would just rain off the top of your bowl onto the ground. You have to have your bowl right side up. Now, he's not talking about an actual bowl. He's not talking about a sort of cafeteria experience. He's talking about consciousness. And are we willing? Are we willing to have our dreams come true? Are we willing to inhabit the realities that we announce we are? That we announce we are. Because if we're not resolved within ourselves deep down inside, that is in fact what we really want to have happen, we're working cross purposes to ourselves, and the upshot will look like an upside down bowl. Stuff will fall onto the ground. Actually, before it hits the ground, somebody else catches it. And their bowl is not upside down. And that's sort of how it works. If you pass on a big creative idea, don't think that it just goes back in the jar. If you pass on a big creative idea, somebody else is going to pick up on it, who is willing in that moment to devote the necessary energies to bringing it into fruition, because that's what that idea wants. That's why it showed up in the first place. See, there's not this randomness of ideas just come and go. They come knocking at the door because they want to be made form. They're not fully realized till they're made form. You know how this works in the creative process. You got an idea for a painting, you got to paint it, don't you? You got an idea for a song, you got to sing it at some point. You may enroll the assistance of others in doing that, teach you how to sing, teach you how to paint. You may even hand the whole thing off and say, I had this great idea, would you paint it for me, and I'll enjoy it secondhand. But somehow or other, the idea is going to come to fruition, and if it doesn't through you, it will through somebody else. But why not through you? And there are a stream of creative ideas that are seeking expression through you because you are uniquely qualified to shepherd them into existence. You have what it takes because you are what it takes. That's a saying we have around here often, but your particular skill set and your history, the stuff you've done up to this point, has prepared you exquisitely for the present moment of bringing some particular idea into form. That's the good news. Here's the other news. It scares you. It scares you a lot. And in fact, one of the self-help writers of renown at the present time, it speaks of this in one of her books, where she says that the thing really that you came here to do in this world is the most terrifying thing to you of anything. More terrifying even than death. More terrifying even than wasps or public speaking or public transportation or whatever else it might be that scares you. Okay? The thing that you came here to do is the most, and so we dance around the thing. Well, you know, I've often thought I could do blah, 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 but we don't commit to it. Because if we committed to it, there'd be an outcome. If there were an outcome, it would be measurable. We'd be subject to judgment by our peers. So we don't let things get to that point. Now, if that's the case for us, in any particular circumstance, that's not a terrible thing. What would be a terrible thing would be not to know that. To be working at cross purposes and not knowing that we're working at cross purposes. That's really messy. But if you know that your dream scares you, that's just good information. And then you can kind of meet it out, parcel it out a bit at a time. Or just be aware of the thing that, yes, I could have climbed Mount Everest, but I just never really chose to. And just kind of have it there like the travel poster on the wall. I could have gone there, but I didn't, you know? And you're all right with that. And you're all right with that because you know. These are ways that you turn your bowl right side up. There are also ways that you determine what size bowl you have. The bigger the container, the bigger the dream that can be contained. And we're not too specific, just specific enough. We're specific enough that we bring a bowl and not a sieve. You know, we bring a certain container that has a capacity to hold volume of stuff. What we don't do is say, okay, exactly what has to go in that, because we don't know. Let me put it this way. See, when you first started out in life, I read an obituary. I read the obituaries, and I know it sounds morbid, and I don't do it for any other reason than I like to see people's life stories and where they're from and what they've done, and it's just, I don't know, it's a thing I've done in my whole life. Well, there was one in there this morning, and this person she passed, how do I put this? She passed in my current worldview of very young. She was like in her 50s, which is way too young to go. And unless she had business elsewhere, which I'm going to assume that she did. But what it said about her, you know, where she went to school and who her family was and all this, it says she always had the aisle seat. She always took the aisle seat in life. Because what she loved more than anything else was meeting people. Isn't that great? She just loved to meet people. And the picture they had of her was this huge grin on this woman's face, taken sometime fairly recently in you know, middle age and adulthood. And she just, this is really what she loved to do. Well, meeting people, what a great thing, you know? Well, she's a greeter for the universe. The universe needs people who meet people. Not everybody likes doing that, and that doesn't make them bad and wrong, but it means the ones that are positioned to do that should have the ability to do it. But here's the thing. What I know is she didn't get to select the people she met before she met them. They just happened by, whether past the actual aisle seat on the airplane or wherever she was, people just came by. Did you select who you would sit with in this room today? You had a reasonable, if you're a long-time attendee here, you had a reasonable expectation of who you might run into, but you didn't know for sure. And I'm willing to bet there's somebody new here today who's, well, I know there are for sure, but there's people here today who haven't been here before, and they may be sitting there wondering, how did I get here? Of all the places I could have been, how did I wind up here? We have classes where we go around and talk at the front end, introduce ourselves and say how we found this place and this teaching. And we've had people from Hong Kong. We've had people from pretty much everywhere but Antarctica. And one of them will probably show up one of these days. Ice Station Zero, you know. And how they got here. To Spring, Texas, to this road, to this room, nobody knows. My point is that we don't know how most of what happened to us happened. How it all kind of came into place. So to think that we would cherry pick into our bowl as if off a buffet of certain things is unrealistic. Instead, what we're looking for is, I guess this. Do we want it sour? Do we want it sweet? Do we want it savory? There are food groups, okay? There are categorizations of things. You can put yourself in a vibration where incoming reality is consistently acceptable to you. And some of it is thrilling. And some of it is a little melancholy. And calls up nostalgia, let's say. There's a feeling, a little bit of, you know, like a song that comes on the radio from your youth or something. Right? Some of it's thrilling, some of it's nostalgic and sweet, poignant. That's the word I was looking for. And there's a Sioux song of righteous indignation at the injustices perceived. And there's a lot of humor. And all of it taken together is acceptable. You place yourself into this sort of vibration where your incoming experience is acceptable and still spontaneous and surprising and sometimes flat out astonishing. And that's what we seek to do rather than nail down every last detail. Rather than going to God in prayer and saying, okay, I need one more thing. I got a lot of things here, but I need one more thing. And I got this list. And to us, that thing is dispensed. And now we have the thing, and now we need another thing to make this thing work. And it's one thing after another, you know. Instead, we're looking at a context of life, a context of joy. Or as we say in this class we're in now, in this vibration, your highs are higher and your lows are higher. Doesn't mean that there's just glee, you know, at everything. But when we're depressed, when we're distressed, when we're alarmed, confused, afraid, the whole thing is lifted up somewhat to a manageable state, to an acceptable state. I'm glad today that I'm worried about some people I know I've not been able to get in touch with. Because if I were not worried about them, I would not care about them. And if I didn't care about them, there'd be a hole in my heart where they used to be. You see? It's like that. And it's been said many different ways, more elegantly than that care, the pain of concern is the price we pay for love. And would we not pay it? Would we trade all that in and just be made of wood, you know, and have things, the sun go up, the sun come down, and people live and die, and it really doesn't matter to us? No, of course not. That's not what we're here for. We're here to feel on behalf of the universe and to have this particular experience. There's one last story I want to tell you. I had another story I was going to tell you, but I can't figure out the end of it because I saw this great, this will have to wait. I saw a great bumper sticker yesterday. I don't remember it. It made no sense. And it made no sense. And I wanted to ask you if you'd seen it too and if it made any sense to you. Because I'm imagining that it's off a real current song lyric or something that I'm not familiar with. And probably a lot of people get a real laugh out of it when they see it at stoplights and stuff. And it just goes to the point that even when stuff is meaningless, it has a meaning. It just means you don't know what it is. It's on some kind of different plane. But that's not the story I wanted to tell you. I'll come back with it when I see the bumper sticker again. Because they live in my neighborhood. Because I don't remember what it said. It had the word respect in it. I remember that much, but that's all. If the light goes on for you, see me afterward. Tell me about this.
Teaser to come back next week.
Yeah, no, yeah, come back next week. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Melody. Yeah, you come back next week here. We'll have some more great stories for you. But this one just kind of blew me away, and so I want to tell you this. When you go to the Horn of Plenty with the bowl of acceptance and all of this, you ask for stuff, especially feelings, contexts, you know, a way of being in the world that's not only acceptable, but really, bottom line, joyful to you. What you don't often realize, you realize when I say you, I don't mean like you, like we, as a group, don't realize, is that often, no, always, always, what we seek is in sort of germinating form right where we are. Maybe not full blown, but it's underfoot somehow. And it's coming into form with our assistance, but right where we are. You have what it takes right now, right where you are. And I have heard stories about this, read stories about this for years, of examples of people who went looking for buried treasure, went looking for the answers to life, went looking for this or that, and found it literally in their own backyard. So I'm reading today, and I just sent Brian this article on account he's a geologist, but I was reading today, there's this continent. There are lost continents. Did you know that? And this is not woo-woo stuff. This is for real. It started out as woo-woo stuff with Plato. See, Plato said there was a lost continent called Atlantis, and he wrote about this. And Julius Caesar got real interested in that because he, followed up on some things. He was also interested in ancient Egypt. And a guy named Ignatius Donnelly in the 19th century wrote a book, took a lot of liberties with Plato, and a whole lot of fortune hunters set sail, looking for Atlantis. It was under the Canary Islands or under here or there. And they found different traces of things. I mean, you can't look at the ocean floor without finding cool stuff. But they didn't find Atlantis. But now they have found a continent. And they're calling it Greater Adria, A-D-R-I-A. And it's around, Santorini, but it's also around the whole Mediterranean rim, apparently. Greece, Italy, Turkey, up into Armenia. And what happened was about, I think it was 40 million years ago, or 400 million years ago. I'll have to fact check this. A bunch of million years ago. There were volcanoes, and there were movements of the tectonic plates on which continents sit. And you remember how you learned in 5th grade, this is how mountains come to be, as tectonic plates push together and they push stuff up. And that's why, and so wherever there's a significant mountain range, it's where two major land masses collided at one point and went squish and pushed up the land, and then the land kind of congealed, and so on. Well, Greater Adria, what they've discovered is that there was a land mass there, a contiguous solid land mass, larger than Greenland. And then it wasn't. And it got disrupted because of the movement of these plates and the underground, the magma flow from the volcanoes and all this, and the whole thing kind of churned up. What it didn't do was just sink. What it didn't do was just plummet. Instead, it sort of folded itself into the neighboring landscape, which now they're able to tell because they have the technology to examine rocks and things and see where these things are from. Okay, that's the science of it. It's interesting. If you're interested in the science of it, I can send you the article. But here's the part that grabbed me and why I'm telling you this. So all of this goop kind of churned up and stuff, and eventually it cooled down and it solidified into the continents and countries that we recognize now. But while it was busy doing that, and it was all real hot underground, limestone was reforming itself under pressure and intense heat into marble. And then the marble gradually migrated to the surface. You ever been to a marble quarry? It's pretty amazing stuff. I mean, they shave it right off the walls of these things. Well, the marble rose to the surface. And the ancients in classical times said, that's really pretty. A whole lot prettier than limestone was. And they carved it up, and they built temples with it. And the temples of Greece and Rome are made out of marble that came from a pre-existing lost continent, which people have set sail and set out on quests ever since to go find. Often, in those days, leaving the temple. Let's get out of the temple and mount a search for what we seek. And it's built into the walls. It's built into the walls. That's what we have to access here now spiritually. You are that which under pressure, under the collision of circumstances and events and consciousness and how you have figured out your life going along. You have transformed from a simple, if slightly uninteresting building material, I guess you might say, into sheer beauty and sheer wonder by calling out from within yourself what's already there. So now that we know that word, when we need something, where do we look? Does Brian have it? He's great, man. Super individual. Love this guy. Plays a massive guitar, as you're about to hear more of. Does Jeffrey have it? Does Ken Dwight have it? Does anybody on the front row have it? Does anybody have it? Who has what I seek? Who has what I want? Oh, wait, it's right here. It's been here the whole time. Why don't I turn within when I have a question? Why don't I go there first? Why don't I turn within? Why don't I turn within? Because the rancher who spits the tobacco juice in the cup and says with a smile, well, drought's over. This is a guy who, by the time he got the microphone stuck in his face, the camera on him, had done his work. He had grieved his losses. He had shaken his fist. He had damned the Almighty in some way, and then walked it back and said, I'm sorry, I don't mean that. He had thrashed around and thought, what am I going to do? And how is this going to be all right? And you know where he did all of that? Every bit of that within himself. No one else. No one else could do that for him. No one else can do that for any of us. So that's where we start. That's why in a teaching like this, we start with the self. We go with it. That's why at the end we sing, or at the beginning actually, we sing a song, I love myself the way I am. At the end we sing a song, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with who? Brian, Jeffrey, Ken Dwight? No, me. Me. Let it begin with me. Let it begin with the one speaking, the one knowing. So that's where we go. That's why we turn within, like we're going to do now. There is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere radiant, everywhere manifesting. And the portal to that, for me, is my own consciousness. That's where I do my work. That's where I heal. That's where I transform. That's where I forgive. That's where I tell a new story in consciousness. I am able to do this because I can conceive of being able to do this. I am able to call forth the desires of my heart because I possess a mental and emotional equivalent for these things. And I realize that what I seek ultimately in this life is a new set of feelings. A feeling of being at home in the universe. A feeling of being safe inside my own skin. A feeling of being approved of, acknowledged, set to work, trusted, even admired, even a little respected. These are feelings, most of all, loved. I choose to feel loved. I choose to feel loving. I choose to feel like a giver. I choose to feel like a receiver. I choose to feel like a person doing both things at once. And I know that whatever I need within myself to have these feelings stick, for my joy to be permanent, albeit flexible. Whatever I need, I was created with it. I came into this world with it. It accompanies me still. And any sense of anything less than this, of having to earn my place in the universe or any of the rest of it, I set aside gently and lovingly as an outworn idea in favor of this new knowing. One life that His Spirit is having a delightful time in this world right now by means of me. For this knowing and the way that it manifests in form, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.
So it is.